Yeah, because it's interesting. That's the big debate within the natural bodybuilding world as far as classic physique goes. Natural bodybuilding is already classic, but just now we're talking about posing is different. And then, of course, the trunks are different, right?
Well, so if you look at the very top athletes in bodybuilding versus classic, there is a clear distinction in the two. If you go back and you look at the amateurs, maybe there's not a clear distinction, but your top level pros, no, there's definitely a distinction. And I'm glad there's two different categories. Absolutely.
Talk about those distinctions.
So let's look at, let's just say Joe Lacera, for example, awesome classic bodybuilder. How does he stack up against Meshack?
He can't.
That's my point exactly.
Right.
Richie Lopez in the PNBA. How does he stack up against Meshack or Siobhan?
That's the thing. Most people can't.
You're just not
stack
going
up.
to.
Right. Fair.
It's a different look. So when you're at the top level, and that's what everybody should be aspiring to be, right? You should look at the very top and say, how do I get there? What does my body need to look like? What do I need to do with my training to create that look? They're two different looks. It's just two different looks at the top level. So in my mind, there's really no debate about it. There's just not. Unless you're comparing, average Joe bodybuilder to average Joe, for lack of a better word, classic, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
But when you look at the top, there is an absolute 100% clear distinction.
Yeah, it's almost, now you're talking about, when we're talking about classic physique, because you brought up those names, you're talking about now the era of, like, say, Steve Reeves, classic, clear class. Like you can't, if you put like a Steve Reeves next to a Meshack, again, it's not going to happen, right? In that era, even though two different eras, but that's what we're talking about when we're talking about classic physique. We're looking at almost, it's a bit lean, it's a bit less.
It's a little bit more streamlined.
Right. Have you had someone who you've seen in classic or bodybuilding and you're like, you know what? You should not be in this class. You should be in that class in terms of the actual division. Sorry. So like, where you had someone who was clearly for bodybuilding, but they somehow are in the classic physique, or vice versa?
Not necessarily anybody within the top 3 or 5.
Okay.
Right? The top 3 or 5 all look like they belong. As you go further down in the placings, maybe, the guy in 16th or 17th, just as an example, nobody in particular, in bodybuilding, maybe he should be in men's physique, right? Oh. And maybe there's a guy in men's physique who you're looking at is like, wow, he could do well in classic. I think people should be a little bit more real with what their physique looks like versus where they should compete to be successful, not what you want to call yourself.
How can someone get a better idea then? Is it just a matter of doing shows and then listening to feedback from the judges in terms of where they should be competing? Like in terms of what to be, because obviously you take someone like a Meshack, whenever we're talking about again, he's an outlier, or Siobhan Cunningham. These guys will know where they stand in terms of where they should be competing. But you have some of the newcomers, they might not know, right? So unless again they're genetic outliers and it's clear.
Yeah,
right?
I think I'm working with a woman right now who is doing an NPC bikini show. I think in April down in Florida or something. She's clean. And however, she may do well there. She would totally dominate in a natural wellness category. Right? So you have that problem too. Who are the people that the athletes are looking up to or trying to emulate, right? Because even in the natural world, a lot of guys and girls are looking towards, the NPC IFBB for inspiration or whatever. And they say, I want to look like Jane Smith. Jane Smith is a bikini competitor. That's what I want to do. Well, you don't have the same genetics as Jane Smith. You don't have the same training regimen. You don't have the same nutrition. You don't have the same lifestyle. I think you have to just be real with yourself where you could compete and do well.